on the enemy. The enemy is not the White House. The enemy is the Islamic State. And that is what we need to stay focused on. And what I see happening is, for the sake of politics, people are paying attention to these missteps and these mistakes, and using that to distract from the serious problem of Islamic extremism.
Now, Audrey, you might think I'm crazy, and maybe from prior conversations you'd be right, but I don't know if this goes far enough when I study that 85% behind attacks in the U.S. were not from these 11 countries, and further, or these 7 countries, and furthermore, were U.S. residents or had legal residence here. So even if this were in effect back then,
Right.
to any one of these attacks, I could go to the Fort Hood bomber, and what you name it, Orlando shooter, they would not have been scooped up in this, magnet. What do you think?
Yeah, Neil, absolutely. I don't view this as an end-all strategy. I view this as a Band-Aid solution for a temporary problem that we have, especially as the administration tries to figure out how to vet refugees and new immigrants. We need a lasting solution. And that solution, just like you're talking about, just as you know, must address the ideological problem. And you know, Neil, as well as I do, that takes us to the birthplace of Islam. That takes us to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, where I can, as a Muslim, point you to 20 websites and 20 publication enterprises that are exporting this extremist interpretation of Islam that people from Fort Hood to Orlando to San Bernardino get into their heads to do damage.
But couldn't they do that already, Azra? In other words, couldn't they link up online? They wouldn't have to fly anywhere. I mean, they could just go online and get that.
Yeah, and that's why we need a more effective strategy, absolutely, that addresses all of the ideological problems. I read and have studied very carefully, all of the strategies that General Flynn, for example, has put forward, and others in the administration. I do know that they recognize that there's an ideological problem. They want to go after the state actors also. And so in this next 30 days, when they're developing their Islamic State strategy, I'm hoping that we'll develop those lasting solutions, to this really serious problem.
Then real quickly, I want to get your take on the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which isn't a fan of this, doesn't like where this is going, is going to protest this mightily. You say what?
Well, we have to be really careful, and we have to study very closely what the politics are that are playing out. Right now, the Council on American-Islamic Relations represents the Muslim right. They represent the far right in our Muslim community. And what we have happening is the Muslim right is aligning with the American left to undermine America's national security. What do they have to gain? They have never wanted us to have a conversation about Islamic extremism, and so they continue the strategy of deflection. And ultimately, what does that protect? It protects those state actors and those enterprises that are, honestly, as you were pointing out, Neil, the real problem. We have to go to the heart of the problem so that our next generation does not inherit this issue of Islamic extremism.
That might be the view of one prominent Muslim, but that is not the view of the former President of the United States, waiting all of 10 days to speak out on something his successor was doing. We're now finding out that Barack Obama has issued a statement saying American values are at stake with this latest move. The president's office, President Barack Obama's office, releasing a statement supporting the protests going on around the country, speaking out against discriminating individuals based on faith, and saying, Kevin Lewis, a spokesman for the former president, that he's heartened by the level of engagement taking place in communities around the country. 10 days to do that. We should say that in the case of Bill Clinton questioning George Bush, it took 18 months. For Ford questioning something Jimmy Carter did, it took 3 months. For Jimmy Carter questioning something his successor Ronald Reagan did, 7 months for his first critical comments.